right, 2%ers, we have, I believe, a pretty easy one today, but it's been a little while since we put out a video, so I think we'll go ahead with this anyway. We're gonna find out why this car here, which is a 2007 Infinity FX35, does not have a horn that works. So let's go ahead and reproduce the symptom real quick. No horn. Now I also notice none of these steering buttons seem to work. So that's also a clue, I believe, as to what the culprit is here. Okay, so the big clue here, despite all the variables that can cause this, bad horn, bad wiring, bad horn button, relay, bad ground, any of these things could cause it, but most likely because of the lack of steering wheel controls, I'm gonna say this is gonna be a bad combination switch or clock spring inside the steering wheel is most likely what it is. So most of these newer cars now, the horn is controlled through a device along with a lot of other steering wheel controls. In the steering wheel, that processes the signals to send to the BCM for those commands to get executed. And I believe we've got most likely a bad clock spring. I don't have an airbag light on. That also often can be a symptom with this. We're gonna check on the scan tool real quick. Now, if you don't have a scan tool, we're gonna show how to do this without a scan tool, which reminds me, for a topic of discussion at the end of the video, let me take a note here. You have thousands of dollars in diagnostic equipment, okay. And for the most part, scan tool is gonna be only moderately useful. Anyway, as you can see, we actually have no codes here. We never had check engine light or anything like that. As I mentioned, we don't have airbag light on. One thing really nice about the Autel MS909, I love that it gives the topology on the networking for the CAN here. We talk about networks over on my pay channel quite a bit. One of the things that I have come to find is we've got different designs of network. So if this is a network problem, on some networks you can't always do the 60 ohm on the resistance check between your CAN high and CAN low. So we'll have to talk about that a little more, and if we end up having a network issue here, then this video will be over on my paid channel at www.schrodingersboxqm.com. But I think the horn is going to be over here in the BCM. What I want to do, the first thing I want to do is rule out, is this going to be a problem on the control side of this circuit, or is this problem on the load side of the circuit? So I don't see it here at all. Okay, let me find where this is. Okay, going to go to this. We're going to go to this IPDM, whatever that is, instrument panel detection module maybe, not sure. Let's go to active test here. Ah, there it is, horn right there. All right, doesn't really matter what data I get here. I just want to see if the horn works. Okay, we're going to hit. All right, and as we hit on, we hear that the horn does work. So what do we know here? We know that our wiring from the BCM, or whatever this IPDM module is, we know that works. We know there's ground. We know there's wiring. The horn works. We clearly are not getting signal to it. This is going to be a problem from the relay box back. So let's go there. All right, now, not all cars will use a horn relay for this anymore. So we want to do some research here. Again, you can just Google a wire diagram for free. I'm using a AllData one. I used to use AllData DIY. It would be like 20 bucks to get a diagram. We can see our horns here. We've got our ground here. We're not worried about the ground. We heard the horn chirp. We're also going to do this without a scan tool as well. We will hear the horn chirp. We're going to follow our wiring up on the power side. Okay, we see the horns combine in over to the next page. Okay, it comes in, it does use a relay. We see where our load side is on this relay. I'm going to say this is going to be hot at all times up here most likely. Yes, it is, comes from fuse 34. Then we want to follow our blue wire here, and this is going to go to a module. I can almost guarantee you. Okay, yeah, this is telling us with the dotted line here that we've got basically a CPU control of this relay. So again, like I mentioned, the clock spring thing. This relay here is not as simple as you push the horn button and it causes ground on the control side to activate the load side relay and apply power to the horn. Well, actually it would apply a ground to the horn, we know. But that's not how this is going to work. It's quite a bit more complicated. So we need to find where our issue is exactly. The first thing we want to do is, how are you going to determine this if you didn't have the scan tool? Because we still need to determine whether this is on load side of the circuit after the relay or whether this is a control issue. That's the very first step in doing this. So let's go under the hood and I'll show you how we would do that. Said relay was over on this side, I believe. Yes, there it is right there. Horn relay. Okay, all right, as basic as it gets. We're just gonna look for our power at all times. There it is right there. Does this relay have a map on it? It does have a map on it, that is good. So we can see our control side here. This is going to be our load side right there. So basically, if I jump to that load side, we would activate the horn. Let me grab a paper clip. Oh, you can only do this because you have thousands of dollars in equipment, man. Paper clip. I don't know how much paper clip costs. I'm not even sure how I have this. So we are going to bypass our relay. Horn works. All right, so we know that our wiring up to this relay is good. This is going to be a control side issue. What we are going to do is put our test light to the control side ground. We'll need to be on battery positive, and we are going to hit this horn button, and that light won't light. No lighting of the horn. This is a control side issue. Okay, your scan tool just tells you what's wrong. Well, as we saw in real time there, that is absolutely completely untrue, and anybody who even has a modicum of understanding on diagnostics knows anybody who says that has no idea what they're talking about. This comes easy to you. Maybe you see where we're heading with this, by the way. All right, we now need to go, we know we need to go into the steering wheel with this. Either there's a defective horn button, defective clock spring, there is something that we know is with the steering wheel at this particular time, so that is where we need to go next. This clock spring is actually behind, like literally behind the steering wheel. This kind of sucks. Hey, this reminds me of something. I only work on old cars. Okay. All right, I was hoping for some kind of a serviceable horn button or something like that. It doesn't look like there is. I am pretty sure we're going to end up replacing this module, especially after all this to get to it. But I definitely don't see that there is anything serviceable in here. This is clearly a bad module. All right, well, we got to figure out how to get this thing out of here. One of the things over on my paid channel, we do cover about airbags. The airbag module has been removed. This is just a bunch of bolt turning is all this is. There is no, the intelligence in this is knowing that this is what I have to do to fix this car. Taking this apart, a monkey can do. There it goes. The thing is knowing that this is what I have to do to fix the car. I would certainly hate to go through all this and find that the whole time it was just a bad horn relay or something. There we go. There's little, there we go. There's little tabs in there. How cool is that? All right. I think that can just hang there. So one of the things I do want to be careful of, I want to make sure I maintain the orientation on this clock spring because it'll, if you over rotate this, so for example, if I'm one turn off like that, then if you keep turning the wheel to the right, you're going to break it. So I want to make sure I orient this and maintain that so I can match up the new clock spring. But anyway, earlier I think I was mentioning about the airbags, and I do not actually even have the battery disconnected. Based on our understanding of how airbags work, you are not going to set off the airbags doing this. You just won't. So I actually left the battery connected, hoping that I'd be able to put voltage to the horn. There's my connectors back there. But if you're doing this, yeah, sure, of course, I suggest that you do disconnect the battery, but honestly, there is no need to. Again, understanding how it works is the key here to not being afraid of it. And that understanding comes from actually doing the homework. There we go. All right, we've got our new clock spring here. This is actually an aftermarket one, so hopefully this will work. I'm a little, this is what the owner decided to go with. I would have chosen a genuine part, considering that the airbag is controlled with this, but this is what they wanted to do. I'm assuming this is pre-centered. It's got this plastic cage on it that clearly is to keep you from rotating it. So I'm going to assume that this is in the correct position by default. We'll go ahead and replace this. All right, I actually noticed when attempting to put it back in, we have to transfer this component over, which is funny. It says right there, don't disassemble, but I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice because we bought an aftermarket part that I'm sure if we bought the original, we wouldn't be reusing components here. Well, whatever the case is, if your car has a clock spring, this is pretty much identical for all models. There really is not a lot of variation here. It's just unscrewing stuff and putting it back together. All right, well, I got a spoiler. I already know it works because the horn actually activated a couple times off camera when I was putting this back together. There we go. Let's, where's the key at? Here we go. Let's go ahead and start this thing up. We also should restore our steering wheel controls. All right, I want to check all these accessories work here because we did remove these. Yep. All right, everything works. Now let's turn our radio on. Yep, we can change the radio stations. Volume works. This person's going to be very, very happy. This was a really easy repair. All right, now close up with our discussion here real quick. And that is, if you haven't put it together, I'm sure you figured out by now, this is a list of all the excuses that I see, and there are many more than this, in the comments from people who don't do the diagnostics and who really think that the way that we did this was ridiculous. And of course, every single one of them would have gone right for the clock spring right off the bat, and they would have been right. They would have fixed the car, and faster than I did. The trick is, what if you replace the clock spring and it still doesn't work? Then those people are dead in the water. We knew 100% this clock spring was going to fix it. Some of these excuses, you have thousands of dollars in diagnostic equipment. Really? Because we fixed it with the test light I got from Paul Paquette. This is a really, really, really nice one. I want to say this one's probably about $30. If it weren't for him, I would never own a $30 test light. The test light that I used before was $3 and a paper clip. We used a $3 test light and a paper clip. That is not an excuse. Every video I do, I show you how to do stuff with basic do-it-yourself tools and equipment, and with higher end equipment like a bidirectional scan tool. Every video I show how to do it both ways. Your scan tool just tells you what's wrong. Oh my God, if I had $1 for every time I heard that. We saw that the scan tool did not tell us what was wrong. The scan tool essentially was pretty useless, honestly. So Anybody that says, oh, they just have a computer that tells you what's wrong, they have no idea what they're talking about. I hate that when people say that. It's actually kind of damaging. I'm not a mechanic, I'm a do-it-yourselfer, but as a professional mechanic, that mentality is really devastating because it makes people think that you don't deserve to be paid for your diagnostic time and skill, because it is a skill. Speaking of which, this comes easy to you. I get that all the time. It does not come easy to me. Anybody who's seen this channel over the last 9 years has seen my progression, where there was definitely a point in time that I would not have been able to do that basic, easy circuit testing to see which side of the circuit this issue was on. That was 9 years ago. It took me 5 or 6 years before I really was able to understand how to do the stuff you saw in this video. It is a matter of working at it consistently, thousands of hours of study and reading and doing things in the garage. That is how I got to the point where I can just diagnose this. Really, we diagnosed this in like less than 5 minutes, and we knew what this car needed to be fixed. And the final one on this list, certainly not by any means the final one of the excuses of the parts changers, is I only work on old cars. And there's two arguments with that. One of them, they work on old cars and they recognize that old cars don't have the complications we did. We would have had a real complication if it turned out this was a CAN bus issue, a module issue. That would have changed the directions of things to a remarkably more complex level. Luckily, we were able to diagnose this was just with the signal input. But with old cars, yeah, of course, if you only work on old cars, then you only have like 4 parts you can guess on at best. That's why they did tune-ups back then, because if you did the distributor cap, the plugs, and the wires, odds are you pretty much fixed everything. There wasn't anything else to fix. So the other thing is people were just as bad at diagnostics back in the 60s and 70s as now. As a matter of fact, in the early 90s, when they first started going to more computer control, and this was probably more in the late 80s, I would say, probably 1988, 89 with the Chrysler K cars, if you remember those. When cars first got computers, mechanics didn't even know what to do. And they always changed the computer. That was all they knew. They didn't know how to do anything else, so they replaced the computer. It's gotta be the computer because they didn't understand it. When their computers are replaced, they go back to the factory for testing. And the factories, when they tested the computers, they found that 99.98% of those computers that were returned to the factory were not bad. Replacing the computer didn't fix it, and if you're anywhere around my age, you know that. They always replace computers and still didn't fix the car. 99.98% of the time they guessed wrong because they didn't know how to diagnose the electrical in the computer. We know how to do that on this channel. So first of all, working on old cars, even if you're gonna go as far back as the late 80s, you're still gonna need to know how to do some of this stuff. And if you work on old cars that are older than that, sure, yeah, I guess you don't have to worry about this, but you'll never be any better than what you are. The other side of this coin is the people who somehow make the argument that there's more skill in working on the old cars because the computer can't tell you what's wrong. There's no computer. As you guys saw in my last little video clip, I worked on a 1958 Buick Roadmaster that had every problem you can imagine. And I can tell you for a fact, working on an old car is way easier by far and away than working on a modern vehicle. I have done both, I can tell you for a fact. That 1958 also did not have an operable horn. It was as simple as looking at the horn relay. I could tell that the issue was before the horn relay, and there was a wiring issue in the steering column that I was able to remove that steering column cover in what, 30 seconds? Like, It took no skill at all. Why do you think every father and son works on their 65 Buick when they work on a car? They never work on like a 2015 Camaro or something like that. No, because it's easy to do the old cars. So the point of this is, if you want to get better at this stuff, you have to push yourself beyond your comfort limit. You have to stop making excuses, and you have to start using the basic equipment and doing it yourself and figuring this stuff out, because it's only going to get more complex from here. If you really need help from it, you watch my paid channel content over at www.schrodingersboxqm.com, and I will walk you step by step to being able to do everything you saw with the diagnosis here. It really isn't that hard. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. We will see you next time.